The autumn equinox ball glittered with 1,000 candles in the grand palace of Nightshade Court. Vampire nobility in their dark, timeless elegance mingled carefully with human dignitaries dressed in formal attire. A fragile, 5-year piece on display for all to see. Jane Pierce stood beside her father, Ambassador Richard Pierce, trying to calm her racing heart. At 24, she'd attended dozens of diplomatic functions, but none like this. The vampires moved with an otherworldly grace that was both beautiful and unsettling. "Smile, Jane," her father whispered, pride evident in his voice. "Every eye is watching. We're proof that humans and vampires can trust each other. This treaty is my life's work." Jane forced a smile, though her hands trembled slightly. She'd heard the stories, the old wars, the bloodshed, the centuries of fear between their peoples. Her father had spent 5 years building this fragile bridge of peace. Across the vast ballroom, Vampire King Adrian Nightshade sat upon his obsidian throne with perfect, unnaturally still posture. He appeared to be in his early 30s, devastatingly beautiful with sharp features and steel-gray eyes. But Jane knew he was centuries old. Those eyes swept across the crowd without interest, without warmth, like he was watching pieces move on a chessboard rather than living beings celebrating. His silver-haired advisor, Lady Celeste, leaned close to whisper urgently in his ear. "Your Majesty, the Council is growing impatient. They demand you choose a vampire bride. Your continued isolation concerns them. The kingdom needs an heir, a future." Adrian's voice was flat, mechanical, utterly devoid of emotion. "I feel nothing, Celeste. Not desire, not preference, not care. I am hollow inside. What bride would want a husband who cannot love her?" "The curse cannot be allowed to—" "The curse is absolute," Adrian interrupted quietly. "I've accepted it. I've been empty for a century. I will remain so." Across the ballroom, Jane reached nervously for a champagne glass from a passing servant's tray. Her hands were still shaking, and the delicate crystal stem snapped in her grip. The sharp crack echoed through the chamber. Jane gasped as pain bloomed across her palm. Blood, bright, vivid red, welled up and dripped onto the white marble floor. The orchestra stopped mid-note. Every vampire in the room turned toward her, their eyes tracking the scent. But none reacted like the king. Adrian's head snapped toward Jane with inhuman speed. His steel-gray eyes flooded completely black. No iris, no white, just endless darkness. He rose from his throne in one fluid, predatory motion and moved faster than Jane's eyes could follow, crossing 50 feet of ballroom in the span of a heartbeat. Suddenly, he was there, right in front of her, trembling violently, his dark eyes fixed on her bleeding palm. His lips pulled back, revealing elongated fangs. The entire ballroom froze in absolute horror. Jane should have been terrified. Should have run. But something in Adrian's expression stopped her. It wasn't hunger in his face, it was anguish, desperation, like a drowning man seeing air for the first time. "Your Majesty!" Lady Celeste's voice cut through the silence like a whip. Time seemed suspended. Adrian stood inches from Jane, his whole body shaking with effort, every muscle tensed. His hands had lifted toward her but stopped, hovering in the air, curling into fists. Jane found her voice, barely a whisper. "Are you all right?" Her words seemed to reach him through whatever storm raged inside. Adrian's eyes squeezed shut, his jaw clenched so hard she heard his teeth grind. His entire frame trembled like he was fighting against invisible chains. When he opened his eyes again, they'd returned to steel gray, but his face showed something it hadn't in 100 years. Raw, unfiltered emotion. Pain. Confusion. Wonder. "Forgive me," he breathed, his voice rough and broken. Then he vanished, moving with supernatural speed out of the ballroom, leaving only the whisper of displaced air. Chaos erupted instantly. Human diplomats rushed for the exits, their faces white with terror. Vampire nobles stood rigid, looking appalled and scandalized. Whispered conversations exploded into frantic shouts. Ambassador Pierce grabbed Jane, wrapping her bleeding hand hastily in his handkerchief. His face had gone completely white, his hands shaking worse than hers. "What have I done? Oh God, Jane, what have I done?" 3 days later, the Pierce residence felt like a tomb. Ambassador Richard Pierce sat at his desk, surrounded by official letters bearing royal seals, his head in his hands. Each letter was another nail in his coffin. His life's work collapsing in real time. "The northern kingdoms are withdrawing from the treaty," he said, his voice hollow with defeat. "The Eastern Alliance is demanding my immediate recall. They're calling me a naive fool who endangered his own daughter to prove a fantasy of peace." He laughed bitterly, the sound broken. Chancellor Morris wrote personally. He said, "I've demonstrated catastrophic judgment that nearly reignited a war and exposed the savage nature of vampires that cannot be civilized." Jane sat across from him, her bandaged hand in her lap, guilt crushing her chest. "Father, this isn't your fault. I was the one who—" "I championed him, Jane." Her father's voice cracked. "For 5 years, I stood before councils and kings and told them Adrian Nightshade was different, civilized, safe, that vampires had evolved beyond their predatory nature, that we could build a future together." Tears streamed down his face. "He nearly attacked you in front of 300 witnesses, my own daughter. I've destroyed everything. The treaty, my career, our family's reputation. Everything." A sharp knock at the door interrupted them. Their guard entered, his face pale as parchment. "Your Excellency, the Vampire King is here. He requests an audience." Jane's heart stopped. Her father went rigid. Adrian Nightshade entered, and Jane barely recognized him. Gone was the royal regalia, the crown, the trappings of power. He wore simple, dark clothing, and for the first time, he looked almost human. Exhausted, vulnerable. His gray eyes carried shadows beneath them, and his movements, while still graceful, lacked their usual supernatural precision. "Ambassador Pierce, Lady Jane." He bowed formally, deeply, a gesture of respect that shocked them both. "I've come to offer reparation for my inexcusable loss of control." Ambassador Pierce's laugh was bitter, broken. "Reparation? Your Majesty, unless you can undo what half the world witnessed, I can reframe it." Adrian's voice was quiet but certain. His gray eyes met Jane's, and she saw something in them she hadn't seen at the ball. Desperate hope. The old treaties, the ones written centuries ago before the wars began, acknowledge one exception to the control laws. One circumstance where a vampire's nature responds involuntarily, beyond all ability to restrain. Jane's pulse quickened. What circumstance? Mate recognition. The words fell like stones into still water. When a vampire encounters their destined mate, their supernatural nature responds instinctively. It's sacred, uncontrollable, and legally protected in the original accords. No vampire can be held accountable for their reaction to their mate because it transcends conscious choice. The room fell silent. Jane's mind raced, trying to process what he was suggesting. Adrian continued, his words careful, measured. If we court publicly, if we show the kingdoms that my reaction was recognition rather than predation, it legitimizes what happened. The treaty stands. Your father's reputation is restored. The peace holds. You want me to pretend we're fated mates? Jane asked, her voice sharp. You want me to lie to the entire world? I'm not certain it would be pretending. Adrian's voice dropped, becoming raw in a way that made Jane's breath catch. I was cursed a century ago, Lady Jane. Cursed to feel nothing. No warmth, no emotion, no connection to anything or anyone. For 100 years I've been empty. A perfect, cold king who ruled with flawless logic because top about nothing. He took a step closer, and Jane saw his hands trembling at his sides. Then you cut your hand, and something inside me shattered. Cracked open after a century of frozen silence. I pity, terror, genuine, overwhelming terror that I heat your. I felt a desperate, clawing need to protect you, to be closer, to understand why you made something move inside me that AI thought was dead forever. His words broke slightly. I don't understand it. I don't know what it means. But I need to understand. Please. Jane stared at him, this ancient, powerful being who suddenly looked lost and frightened. Give me 6 months, Adrian said quietly. Court me publicly. Let me understand why you affect me this way. Then you're free, and your father is saved. Ambassador Pierce looked at his daughter with desperate, pleading eyes. Jane studied Adrian carefully. 6 months. But I want honesty between us, Your Majesty. Complete honesty. No political games, no manipulation. If we're doing this, we do it with truth. Something flickered in Adrian's eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or relief. You have my word, Lady Jane. Complete honesty. The next evening, an elegant black carriage arrived precisely at sunset. Adrian waited at the palace entrance, dressed simply in dark clothing that made his gray eyes seem to glow. Lady Jane. He offered his hand to help her down. Even through her glove, she felt the coolness of his skin. Thank you for coming. He led her through quiet corridors to a private garden that took Jane's breath away. White flowers glowed silver in the moonlight, night-blooming jasmine, moon lilies, pale roses that seemed to capture starlight. This was my mother's garden, Adrian said quietly, leading her to a stone bench. Before the curse, I used to paint here. After, I couldn't see the beauty anymore. Couldn't feel it. Jane sat, acutely aware of his presence beside her. Tell me about your curse. The truth. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of a century of loneliness. 100 years ago, I executed a witch's son for treason. His name was Marcus, and his crime was genuine. He'd conspired with enemy kingdoms to overthrow me, to plunge us back into war. I gave him a fair trial. The evidence was overwhelming. But he was her only child, and she loved him beyond reason. He paused, pain flickering across his features. She came to me after the execution. She said, "You took feeling from me, so I take feeling from you." Then she spoke the curse. "Your heart shall be ice, your soul untouched by warmth, until freely given love, unbound by magic, destiny, or need, melts the frozen throne within." What happened? It was immediate. Every emotion just stopped. Joy, sorrow, anger, love, fear, gone. My heartbeat slowed until it nearly stopped. Food became tasteless. Music became noise. Art became meaningless shapes. His voice grew hollow. I ruled perfectly because I cared about nothing. I was the ideal king. Cold, efficient, immortal, and completely empty. Jane's chest ached. That sounds like torture. It was. Adrian finally looked at her. For a century, I've been a ghost in my own life. Then you bled, and something inside me cracked. I didn't want to feed Jane. I wanted to protect you. To understand why you made warmth flood through me for the first time in 100 years. They sat in silence, the night garden soft around them. "This courtship," Jane said carefully. "Let's make a pact, complete honesty. And let's try to be friends, real friends. I want to know you, the person beneath the crown and the curse." Something shifted in Adrian's expression. Hope, fragile and tentative. "I'd like that. I don't remember what friendship feels like, but I'd like to try." The first 2 months were awkward. Jane resented being a political prop, someone to parade at functions while nobles whispered and judged. Adrian struggled with the overwhelming flood of emotions after a century of numbness. Sometimes he'd withdraw completely. Other times he'd seem almost desperate to feel something, anything. They argued about trivial things. Jane accused him of being controlling when he insisted she have vampire guards. Adrian accused her of not taking the arrangement seriously when she showed up late to a state dinner. "You think I want to be here?" Jane snapped one evening after a particularly tedious function. "Playing your devoted mate while everyone stares and whispers? This isn't my life, Your Majesty. This is yours." "You agreed to this," Adrian shot back, his newfound emotions making him sharp. "Your father's career depends on—" "Don't you dare bring my father into this, as if I don't know exactly what's at stake." Jane's eyes flashed. "I gave up 6 months of my life for him. The least you could do is treat me like a person instead of a political tool." Adrian went very still. Then, quietly, "You're right. I'm sorry. I've spent so long viewing everything through strategy and necessity that I forgot. You're not a chess piece. You're a person who gave up her freedom to help people she loves. That takes courage I'm not sure I've ever had." The anger drained out of Jane. "I'm sorry too. I know this isn't easy for you. Learning to feel again after so long." "It's terrifying," Adrian admitted. "Every emotion is so intense. I don't know how to control it. How to exist with this constant flood of sensation." Jane's expression softened. "Maybe that's your problem. You're trying to control it. Emotions aren't meant to be controlled. They're meant to be felt." Something changed between them that night. They stopped performing for each other and started actually talking. Over the following months, their friendship deepened in unexpected ways. Adrian took Jane to the palace library one evening, a cathedral of books stretching 3 stories high. "This was where I spent most of my cursed years," he admitted. "Reading about emotions I couldn't feel, trying to remember what they meant." Jane pulled out a volume of poetry. Did it help? No. It was like reading descriptions of colors to someone born blind. He looked at her. "But now, when you read to me, something shifts. Like the words finally connect to something real inside me." So Jane read to him, poetry and prose, tragic romances and hopeful stories. Sometimes she'd glance up to find him watching her face instead of listening, his expression soft with wonder. "What?" she'd ask. "Your voice changes when you read something that moves you," he'd say quietly. "It gets softer, more musical. I'm learning to hear the difference." One evening, Jane found him in his art studio, a room he'd admitted he hadn't used in decades. Canvases were propped against walls, all half-finished landscapes from before the curse. "I thought I'd try again," Adrian said, looking almost embarrassed. "But I can't remember how to see beauty, how to translate feeling onto canvas." "Then don't paint what you see," Jane suggested gently. "Paint what you feel." "I don't know what I feel." "Then let's figure it out together." Jane picked up a brush, dipping it in blue paint. "Close your eyes. Tell me the first thing that comes to mind when I say moonlight." Adrian closed his eyes. "Cold. Silver. Distant." "That's what you think. What do you feel?" A long pause. "Peaceful. Quiet. Like the world is holding its breath." Jane smiled. "There. That's what you paint." They spent hours there, Jane asking questions, Adrian slowly, painfully rediscovering the language of emotion through color and form. By the end of the night, he'd created something abstract but beautiful. Swirls of silver and blue and deep purple that somehow captured that peaceful, breath-held quality of moonlight. "I made something," Adrian said, staring at the canvas with wonder. "I've felt something and made it real." Jane touched his arm gently. "You're not as empty as you think." Another evening, Adrian appeared at her residence with an unusual request. "Teach me to laugh," he said simply. Jane blinked. "What?" "I don't remember how. Before the curse, I laughed often. But now, even when something strikes me as amusing, which is starting to happen, I don't know how to express it." So Jane told him stories, ridiculous tales from her childhood, terrible jokes, absurd diplomatic incidents. At first, Adrian just watched her, studying her laughter. Then she told him about accidentally calling the Northern ambassador Your Rotundity instead of Your Excellency. And something broke in Adrian. A sound escaped him, rusty, surprised, half-choked. Then it grew, becoming fuller, richer, until actual laughter spilled out. He looked shocked. "Was that?" "That was laughter," Jane confirmed, her own laughter bubbling up. "A bit rusty, but definitely laughter." Adrian laughed again, and Jane realized she was witnessing something miraculous, a man remembering how to be human. By the 4th month, something had shifted between them, something neither could ignore. One night, Adrian took Jane to the empty grand ballroom. "I want to teach you to waltz," he said. "It's one of the few things I remember enjoying before the curse." He wound an enchanted music box, and a haunting waltz filled the cavernous space. His hand settled at her waist, careful, reverent. His other hand took hers. "Ready?" he murmured. They moved together, Adrian leading with flawless grace, while Jane concentrated on not tripping. "Relax," Adrian said softly, his lips close to her ear. "Trust me, I won't let you fall." Jane exhaled and let herself trust. Suddenly, they were flying across the marble floor, the world, spinning in elegant spirals. "You're natural," Adrian murmured. "You're a patient teacher." Jane stumbled slightly, and Adrian caught her effortlessly, his arms tightening to steady her. They froze, suddenly aware of how close they were. Her hands on his chest, his arms around her, their faces inches apart. "Your heart," Jane whispered, feeling beneath her palm. "It's barely beating." "It hasn't truly beaten for a century." But even as he said it, there was a flutter, a single strong beat. Adrian's eyes widened. "That's impossible." Jane spread her hand wider. Another beat, stronger. "Maybe it just needs reminding." She took his hand and placed it over her own heart. "Feel mine. Let yours remember." They stood like that, frozen, feeling each other's heartbeats. Adrian's heart stuttered, then beat again, and again. "Jane," he breathed, "what are you doing to me?" "Nothing you aren't doing to me," she whispered back. The music box wound down, but they didn't move, didn't step apart. "This courtship," Adrian said quietly, his voice rough. "It doesn't feel fake anymore." "No," Jane agreed. "It doesn't." Adrian's hand moved from her heart to her face, cupping her cheek with infinite gentleness. "I'm feeling things I thought impossible. When you smile, I feel warmth. When you're away, I feel longing. Yesterday, when you laughed, I felt joy so sharp it hurt. A good hurt. A human hurt." Jane's breath caught. "Adrian." "I think I'm falling in love with you," he interrupted. "Real love, not magic or destiny, just love. The kind that terrifies me because I could lose it. Lose you." the kind that makes me want to be better, feel more, live instead of this. Existing. Tears stung Jane's eyes. I'm falling too, but I'm scared. You're immortal and I'm human. What if this warmth fades? What if you go back to being empty? What if... May we'll face it together, Adrian said firmly. I don't know what the future holds, but I know that for the first time in a century, I want a future, because you're in it. He leaned closer, his forehead touching hers. May I kiss you? Yes, Jane whispered. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, exploring. Then it deepened, becoming something more urgent, more real. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. Adrian's heart was beating steadily now, strong and warm beneath Jane's palm. Your heart, she marveled. It beats for you, Adrian whispered. Only for you. By the 5th month, they were inseparable. They spent evenings reading together in the library, mornings walking through the gardens, nights dancing in the empty ballroom. Adrian painted Jane constantly, trying to capture the exact shade of gold in her brown eyes, the way her smile transformed her entire face, the graceful curve of her neck. Jane learned about vampire history, about Adrian's childhood before the curse, about the weight of ruling for centuries. They shared their fears and hopes and dreams. They glanced together, argued passionately about art and philosophy, sat in comfortable silence. Adrian's curse was clearly breaking. His heart beat regularly now. His skin was warmer. Colors were more vivid. Food had taste again. He was coming alive, bit by bit, day by day. But hovering over their happiness was the reality neither wanted to face. Jane was mortal. She would age, while Adrian stayed frozen at 30. They had perhaps 50 years together, a blink for an immortal. Then she'd be gone, and he'd have eternity alone with just the memory of her. One night, Jane voiced what they'd both been avoiding. What happens when I'm old and you're still young? Adrian pulled her closer on the garden bench where they sat. Then I'll love you when you're old. I'll love your gray hair and your laugh lines and the way your hands shake when you're 70. I'll love every single day I get with you. And after I die? Jane's voice was barely a whisper. Then I'll spend eternity grateful for the 50 years you gave me. Grateful that you taught me to feel again. Grateful that I got to love you and be loved by you, even if it was brief. Tears streamed down Jane's face. That's not enough. It's not fair. No, Adrian agreed, his own eyes wet. It's not fair, but it's real, and I'll take real and temporary over empty and eternal any day. They held each other as the moon rose, both knowing their time was borrowed, both choosing to love anyway. 2 weeks before their 6-month arrangement was set to end, everything changed. Lady Celeste came to Adrian in his private chambers, her expression grave. Your Majesty, we have a problem. Your cousin, Lord Victor, has returned from the Eastern Territories. He's calling an emergency council meeting. Adrian's jaw tightened. Victor. I should have known he'd eventually make his move. What move? Jane asked. She'd come to trust Celeste over the months, Adrian sighed heavily. Victor is my cousin and next in line for the throne. For a century, he's been waiting for my curse to kill me. Cursed vampires eventually fade into nothing. He's been patient, building alliances, waiting for me to weaken and die so he could take power. But your curse is breaking, Jane said. Exactly. Which means Victor's century-long plan is falling apart. A strong, feeling Adrian is far more dangerous to his ambitions than a cursed, empty one. Adrian stood, his expression hardening. He's going to challenge me, probably claim I'm unfit to rule, weakened by human love, distracted by mortal affairs. He'll have gathered enough support among nobles who fear change. Celeste nodded grimly. I've heard rumors. He's allied with several vampire lords who want to restart the war. War is profitable. Weapons trade, expansion opportunities, power consolidation. They've also made deals with certain human kingdoms who stand to gain from conflict. My father's treaty, Jane breathed. If Victor takes power... The treaty dies with my rule, Adrian confirmed. Victor will restart the war within months. Everything your father built will be destroyed. What do we do? Adrian took Jane's hands in his. We face him. Together. The emergency council meeting was held in the grand throne room, packed with vampire nobility and human diplomats. Lord Victor stood at the center, tall and cruel-featured, with eyes that held centuries of ambition. Cousin, Victor said with false warmth, how good of you to join us, and with your human companion, how charming. Adrian's voice was cold. What is this about, Victor? Concern for the kingdom, Your Majesty. Victor addressed the assembled crowd. Our king has ruled for centuries with perfect, emotionless logic. The curse, while tragic, made him an ideal leader, unburdened by sentiment, unswayed by personal feeling. But now, bewitched by human affection, he's become weak, distracted. He speaks of love, while our kingdom requires strength. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Adrian stepped forward. I was not strong, Victor. I was empty. There's a difference. For a century, I ruled without understanding my people, without caring about their joys or suffering. That's not strength, that's negligence. You ruled with perfection, Victor countered. No favoritism, no emotion-driven mistakes. Now you can barely make a decision without consulting your human pet. You've chosen a mortal queen who'll be dust in decades. You've weakened yourself for fleeting sentiment. I've chosen love over emptiness, Adrian said firmly. I've chosen to finally leaders rather than merely exist. If that's weakness to you, then we have very different definitions of strengths. Victor's smile turned cruel. Then prove your strength, cousin. I invoke the ancient right, challenge for the throne. We duel, here and now. The winner rules. The loser, he shrugged. Well, there won't be a loser, just a winner and a corpse. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Adrian's eyes narrowed. You want to duel me your throne? I want to save this kingdom from a king who's forgotten what it means to be vampire. You've gone soft, Adrian. Human soft. and that will discourage that old." Victor turned to the council. "The ancient rite requires more than physical combat. The duel ends with the sacred trial. Both challengers must walk through fire blessed by the first ancestors. The fire burns away deception, reveals true nature. Only a vampire with a true, strong heart can inspired. Our king's heart was frozen for a century. Now it allegedly beats again. But is it truly strong? Or is it a weak, half-broken thing, kept alive only by human sentiment?" Adrian understood the trap. Victor was gambling that Adrian's newly awakened heart wasn't strong enough yet to withstand the sacred fire. And he might be right. Adrian could feel his heart beating, yes, but it still stuttered sometimes, still felt fragile, like something newly born. "I accept your challenge," Adrian said clearly. Victor's smile widened. "Excellent. We duel at moonrise." As the council dispersed to prepare, Jane grabbed Adrian's arm. "You can't do this. What if your heart isn't strong enough? What if the fire—" "Then I lose. And Victor becomes king, and everything we've worked for dies with me." Adrian cupped her face. "But I have to try, Jane. I can't let him destroy the peace, can't let him restart the war. Too many lives depend on this." "Let me help. Let me—" "You can't. This is vampire law, vampire trial. Humans can't interfere." Adrian kissed her forehead. "Just, if something happens to me, promise you'll live. Promise you'll be happy. Promise you won't let my death steal the warmth from your life, the way the curse stole it from mine." Jane was crying now. "Don't talk like that. Don't you dare give up." "I'm not giving up. I'm preparing for all possibilities." Adrian held her close. "But know this. Loving you was worth everything. Even if I lose, even if this kills me, having loved you and been loved by you made every moment worth it. You gave me life again, Jane. Real life. I'll carry that into whatever comes next." They held each other as the sun set and moonrise approached, both terrified of what was coming. Moonrise came too quickly. The throne room had been cleared, leaving just open space for the duel. Vampire nobles lined the walls. Human diplomats watched from a safe distance. Ambassador Pierce stood with tears streaming down his face, helpless to intervene in vampire affairs. Adrian and Victor faced each other in the center of the room. Both had removed their formal robes, wearing only simple fighting clothes. "Last chance to yield, cousin," Victor said mockingly. "Yield, choose a proper vampire bride, and I'll let you live out your days in peaceful retirement." "I'd rather die standing than live kneeling," Adrian replied. The duel began. They moved with supernatural speed, too fast for human eyes to follow clearly. Jane could only catch glimpses. Adrian's fist connecting with Victor's jaw, Victor's claws raking across Adrian's chest, both of them spinning and striking with lethal precision. Blood spattered the marble floor, both of them wounded, both refusing to yield. Adrian was holding his own, but Jane could see the strain. His newly awakened emotions made him more human, more vulnerable than Victor's cold calculation. Victor fought with the ruthlessness of someone who'd never felt mercy or doubt. The fight raged for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Finally, Adrian managed to grab Victor and throw him across the room with such force that Victor crashed into a marble pillar, cracking it. Victor struggled to his feet, blood streaming from his mouth, his expression furious. "The physical duel is done," Lady Celeste announced formally. "Both challengers have proven their combat strength. Now comes the sacred trial, the fire that reveals true nature." 2 vampire priests brought forth ancient braziers, lighting them with ceremonial torches. The flames burned, an eerie blue-white, crackling with supernatural energy. "The challengers will walk through the sacred fire," Celeste intoned. "The fire burns away deception and reveals the strength of one's heart. Only a vampire with a true, strong heart, one capable of genuine feeling, genuine connection, genuine rule, can survive. A false heart, a weak heart, or a heart corrupted by ambition will burn." Victor strode to the flames first, his expression confident. He walked through the fire, and it parted around him like water, or seemed to. But Jane saw him flinch, saw scorch marks appear on his skin before he emerged on the other side. His heart wasn't as pure as he claimed, but it was strong enough to survive. "Your turn, cousin," Victor said, breathing hard. "Let's see if that human-touched heart of yours can withstand the truth." Adrian approached the flames. Jane could see his hesitation. Not fear of death, but fear of what it would mean if he failed. Fear for Jane, for her father, for the treaty, for all the lives that depended on him. He stepped into the fire. Immediately, flames engulfed him. Jane heard his sharp intake of breath, saw him stumble. The fire was burning him. His newly awakened heart wasn't strong enough yet. It had learned to beat, to feel, to love, but it was still fragile, still new. He was losing. He was going to burn. "No!" Jane didn't think. She just moved. She ran toward the flames, toward Adrian, every instinct screaming at her to reach him. "Jane, stop!" Her father's voice, Celeste shouting warnings, Victor laughing cruelly. But Jane didn't stop. She plunged into the sacred fire. The flames should have killed her instantly. She was human, vulnerable, with no supernatural protection. But the fire didn't burn her. Instead, it wrapped around her like a warm embrace, like recognition. She reached Adrian in the heart of the flames. He stared at her in shock and horror. "Jane, what are you? You'll die." "Not without you," Jane said firmly. She took his hands in hers. "Your heart isn't weak, Adrian. It's just new. It needs support while it learns to be strong. Let me give you that. Let me share my strength with you." "You can't. The fire will—" "The fire isn't burning me," Jane said, and it was true. The flames danced around her, but didn't consume her. "Maybe because my love for you is pure. Maybe because freely given love is the strongest magic there is. I don't know. But I'm here, and I'm not leaving you." Adrian's eyes filled with tears. He squeezed her hands, and Jane felt something shift, felt his heartbeat strengthen beneath her palm, felt warmth flood through him. The curse had required Freely given love, unbound by magic, destiny, or need to break it. Jane's choice to run into fire that should kill her, demanding nothing, expecting nothing, just loving him. That was the purest expression of freely given love possible. The father recognized it, accepted it. The flames around them began to glow brighter, but not with burning heat, with warmth, with life. Together they walked through the fire and emerged on the other side. Adrian's heart beat strong and steady. His skin was unmarked. The sacred fire had accepted him, accepted them both. The throne room fell absolutely silent. Victor stared in disbelief. Impossible, he breathed. A human can't survive the sacred fire. This is some trick. No trick, Lady Celeste said, her voice filled with wonder. The sacred fire judges the strength of one's heart. Lady Jane's heart was pure enough to survive. And together, their hearts were strong enough to pass the trial. The fire has given its judgment. She turned to the assembled nobles. King Adrian has proven his heart is true, strengthened by love, not weakened by it. The challenge is over. He remains our king. Victor's face twisted with rage. This isn't over. I have armies, alliances, which you'll disband immediately, Adrian said, his voice carrying the full weight of his authority. Or face execution for treason. You conspired to restart a war for personal profit. You gambled with our people's lives for power. That's treason, Victor. I could have your head right now. Victor looked around at the assembled nobles, seeing no support in their faces. The sacred fire had spoken. He'd lost. Leave, Adrian commanded. Exile. You're banished from this kingdom. If you return, the sentence is death. Guards moved forward. Victor was escorted away. His century-long scheme collapsed in a single night. As the throne room began to empty, Jane suddenly swayed. The adrenaline was wearing off, and she realized how close she'd come to dying. Her legs buckled. Adrian caught her immediately, lifting her into his arms. "I've got you," he murmured. "I've got you." But Jane wasn't dying. She was just exhausted, overwhelmed, processing what she'd done. Adrian carried her to his private chambers, laying her gently on his bed. Ambassador Pierce rushed in moments later. "Jane, are you hurt? What were you thinking, running into sacred fire?" "I was thinking I couldn't watch him die," Jane said weakly. "I was thinking I'd rather burn than live without him." Her father sat on the bed, taking her hand. "You scared me half to death, sweetheart, but I've never been more proud of you. You did what I've tried to do my whole career. You built a bridge, not with treaties or words, but with courage and love." Adrian knelt beside the bed. "Jane, what you did, you could have died. You should have died. No human has ever survived the sacred fire. The fact that you did means—" He types, struggling for words. "It means your love is powerful," Celeste said quietly from the doorway. "Powerful enough to protect you. Powerful enough to strengthen a heart that was still learning to beat. The sacred fire doesn't burn true love. It recognizes it." Jane looked at Adrian, really looked at him.